How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. On today's show, I have Matt Boerum, and Matt is heading up Audible Reality, which is a company. They've got a new app coming out. It's going to do some interesting things to sound and how we listen to music, and I think eventually how we produce it. I'm very interested to learn about this. Matt has some experience with 3D audio and audio and VR, and it sounds like we're going to be on the cutting edge of some new technology. So excited to hear about it. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Nice to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. I'll have to say, I'm going into this like with a little bit of a question mark in my head. Like kind of like unsure, like what exactly Audible Reality is, what it's going to do. But it sounds like an interesting new technology. And you have some background in like VR, 3D audio, and some of that stuff. As because you're an audio engineer, you're an educator, you're a musician, and maybe
Yeah,
you could tell us a little bit about that to set us up for what led you here to
sure,
Audible
sure.
Reality.
Yeah, and you're not the first to wonder what Audible Reality is. I mean, it's definitely the brainchild of a lot of audio engineering, a lot of tech, and education all wrapped in one, and really winding up in a place that is definitely doing some new stuff in the field of audio and music.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, just to start about my background, I've been a musician since I've been a little kid. I mean, I used to perform in plays at school and was always the little ham, that would lead the singing part and all that. Anyway, that grew into me, being in high school and starting my first band. And I went to school for engineering, and I would say probably the first or second year of doing that, I love engineering. I have a very technical mind, inventive mind, but I just absolutely hated the algorithms and the paperwork. I wanted to actually get my hands dirty, and it was about that time I found American University in D.C., and I'm originally from Maryland. So I was studying at University of Maryland. I was recording my first band. My good friend, who's now a country singer, he was recording us, and I was just fascinated by the fact that he could control all these knobs. And I just asked him, I was like, dude, where did you figure out how to do that? Like, I got to figure that out. And he had mentioned that he had taken a course at college in audio engineering. And I was like, you're shitting me. Like, they'll let you get a degree in this, So, there weren't a lot of schools back then. This is about like 2000 or so, 2001. But I did find that American, this political science school in DC, famous for business and poli-sci, actually had this defunct audio program in the basement of a physics program or a physics building. And it was started in like the late 1970s. It was really, really like, it was a studio, but it was just a place of like forgottenness, like it was just this hole in the basement. Nobody knew unless they needed to know. And I just fell in love with that, because my dream at that point was like, I got to learn everything about audio engineering. This is awesome. This is everything I love about music and tech all in one. And long story short, I ended up staying on and building this like underground program into one of the best programs in the United States. And in fact, in 2011, we were awarded the #1 audio tech school in the United States. I ended up building a $2 million studio with John Stork. Built a brand new facility for recording, took the program from about 8 students to 130, 160 by the time I left. And really, that was my first hurrah, that was my first career. And by the time I had done all that, I basically built my dream. So then I was looking to do something else. I wasn't really happy sitting around babysitting it, But anyway, during that journey, which was really formative into what I'm doing now, is I was also teaching. We didn't have professors. You couldn't find professors with a degree and actually recording in studios. So they hired me as like an adjunct when I was about 23 years old. And I ended up staying on and teaching a good portion of all the classes that we had. And I was inventing new classes as we go. And another guy that I work with, we were really collaborative and just trying to like figure out what students wanted to learn and give them that access. And in doing so, I was working in the studio by day, like fixing consoles and all that kind of stuff, and then teaching students how to mix and develop guitar pedals and all this other stuff. And I thought what was really fascinating in all that is you have this very technical science that gives you sound, but it gives you an emotion. It gives you like, you're a musician, you get a feeling. There's something just about music that we all gravitate to, but it's not technical necessarily. It's like very subjective related to that technical aspect. And I always was trying to figure out a way to teach that. It's like, your mix is really, really good, but the EQ on that vocal is just wrong, and it's wrong because it's just too bright, or it's not loud enough. But was there a deeper way to tell someone how to get to the right position? If you just turn the EQ a little bit more, if you just push the volume up a little more and pull down the drums. I was really looking for that. It's like, is there a way that somebody could come into my studio and say, here's a Nirvana record, make it sound just like that, like pull all the bells and whistles and do that. And so about that time when I was leaving American, a company out of Montreal had started called Mixed Genius, which was also turned into Lander now, if you know Lander.
Yeah.
That's an automated mastering service. So at that time, I was actually applying for another job. I got accepted into like the final standings at Belmont in Nashville, and I thought, oh, this is a dream job. I'm gonna go there. And the dean of that school was like, look, we love you, but you need a PhD. Why don't you go to McGill? And so everybody in my field knows McGill is like one of the only places you can get a PhD in sound recording. So it was a natural. I was like, all right, I'm done in DC. Let's go up to Montreal and figure this out. And back to Mixed Genius and Lander, they had just started. And so my advisor is George Massenberg, and my other advisor is Richard King, is a longtime Grammy-winning classical engineer. And anyway, they're like, hey, there's this new company. Your thesis proposal is very much in line with what they're trying to do. They're trying to figure out why engineers do what they do, and if you could emulate that, or somehow figure out a way to simplify that process. So naturally, I ended up getting a research gig with them, and then the McGill journey happened. So that's how I came into 3D audio and AI, and really just kind of pushing the boundaries of audio tech in general.
Okay, wow, that's a cool journey. And you tapped into something that like endlessly fascinates me about music. It's like the technical, like a mathematical almost side of it, like even like theory and or recording and engineering. It can be like so formulaic, but then there's that emotional side that is like, that's like where all the chaos sort of comes in, and it makes it really interesting how even sometimes some of those like technical things are best defying. You're better off like not doing that to get a certain emotion sometimes. It's really interesting how it's this constant back and forth between being technical, being creative, and emotional. And I know, like, I think especially when you said you're a singer-songwriter and like to record your own songs, like, but you're also an engineer, you're constantly bouncing back and forth between those two mindsets when you're making music.
And so it's a good segue into how Audible Reality came about. Was at McGill, my initial thesis proposal was trying to figure out if I don't even remember how I called it, but you know what it's like to be in a studio and you turn a knob and the damn thing's off and you're like, damn, it sounds great. And you look, oh shit, it didn't do anything, right? So I was always fascinated with the kids who'd come and be like, oh, the new 1176 model's out on Waves and whatever, and whatever other emulator and blah, blah, blah. I thought, okay, how different really is that circuit sounding? And is it because George Massenberg invented it? Yeah, probably, because George is fucking incredible. Or is it just like, whatever? Is it somebody just ripped off a clone and it sounds about 90% there? So I was always fascinated with that. It's like, could you actually prove that if somebody turned a knob on, like, let's say a blank plate, and it was just a one knob, but it controlled 5 different compressor circuits that were supposedly the same, would anybody really notice the difference? And would they pick the best one that's supposed to be the best one? And that, that's super subjective listening. It's like, I listen to something, I get a response, I'm grading it on or evaluating it on some kind of descriptive class of the audio, and I'm going to assume that, you know, from that data, I have an understanding of that process and its subjective quality. You know, where does it get me? So at Lander, that's what I was trying to help them with, was like, how can you think like a mastering engineer, or just an engineer in general, if you don't know what the audio input is? You know, can you pull apart the audio itself and data and classify that into some kind of value, and then can you make a decision on that as if an audio engineer was there in the studio? And you know, at McGill, we were kind of doing the opposite, where it was like hyper realism. We had full 3D studios with the best sound quality imaginable, like just stuff would blow your mind when you walk in the door. And I thought, okay, this is like two worlds colliding. We have like super high res, 3D space, amazing experience, and then you've got this like simplified process that, because people just want to make music and they want to feel as if it's pro and they can put it out. And I thought, if you could somehow get the experience of 3D audio to be as simple as the Lander process, where you upload a track and it makes it sound better, then you've got something that just is going to blow the minds of everybody in music, and it's a tool that's going to take us from stereo to something even better than we ever dreamed of. So, you know, back to what you're talking about the experience and like connecting with it, that was my focus at McGill. Was I was studying essentially how do we connect with 3D audio. If I recorded something in real life through your own ears, you know, if I was able to tap into your own brain and figure out your experience, and then I simulated that in 3D audio, what would that be like? And what would I actually have to simulate to make sure that experience is one-to-one or even equivalent in some case? And I learned a lot in that. It's like you can really make the listener excited just by giving subtle 3D audio cues. It doesn't have to be drastic. It just be something that stands out to them, and all of a sudden it perks their, you know, attention. So as I started learning about that, I realized, you know, if there's a way for me to simplify the 3D audio process, which is one of the most complicated audio tech, you know, problems to solve in the world, you know, how do you get that to be a push button and then get that experience on the listener side? And then if you can do all that, now we're talking about something that could be really, really influential in making music and in listening to music.
Maybe I can ask you to kind of back up about 3D audio. Maybe just explain what that is, because it's not the same as, say, surround sound. We're talking about something a little bit different here. How do you define 3D audio exactly?
Yeah, well, there are many ways I've heard it being defined, but you know, scientifically speaking, 3D audio is representation of what you experience every day through your two ears, right? So just like binocular vision, you have two ears, so we call that binaural hearing. And binaural hearing takes in the differences between the two ears hitting the neural pathways in your brain. So really, your ear is just like a microphone. I used to say this all the time, but you know, to the students, the microphone's dumb. There's no brain attached to it. So you can point it somewhere, but it may not be what you want to hear. You know, you have to have an engineer attached to that to figure out how it's going to sound and how it's going to translate. So in 3D, you have the brain. I mean, that's it. You, wherever you are, you're in 3D if you're in the real world. So, you know, you're capturing cues of sound that happen all the time. All the pressure that's changing around you is creating different cues on your ears, and your brain is extrapolating all that data to say, okay, that louder sound I just heard came from my right, you know, a little bit above me. And then that bigger sound just came from behind. But if you just think about like the millions of sound waves that hit you at any one time, and like the differences and all that, it's really interesting to think, how the hell does your brain know what any of that means? It's all sine waves at you know, at the point that it hits your ears. So how does the brain figure out that one sine wave is different from the other, and one equals a car and the other one equals a knock on a desk? You know, that to me is really fascinating. So when you talk about 3D audio, you're not just playing sound through speakers that are surrounding you. You are actually giving the brain a realistic interpretation of what sound is like in the real world. So you're emulating binaural cues that your brain is going to interpret as something that it knows and something that it has heard before, and it triggers cues in the brain, it triggers memories, all this good stuff that makes it feel as if it's real.
And all of that can be accomplished with headphones or two speakers.
Yeah, because that's just your output, right? So two speakers is harder because you have to figure out the space and you got to take that out of the equation. But that's why, you see a lot of 3D done on headphones, because headphones isolates the two ears. So then you can deliver those cues separately to the two ears, and you can essentially control your brain into a virtual position, a virtual environment, as we call it. Yeah.
That's cool and crazy like I mean, like, I'm sure many of us have had the experience of, say, like, you're miking a guitar amp, and what you hear on that mic is so different than what you hear in the room, and then maybe you move it an inch and it's like a totally different tone. And I found myself like sticking my ear next to the speaker to try to like figure it out, but I'm still getting another ear's worth of information coming in, whereas the microphone is just that one thing. So it can be very tricky sometimes to like get what you hear. I think especially out of a speaker, to get the sound you hear recorded.
Yeah.
So is a lot of the work done in the recording process with 3D audio? Like, do you need two mics or maybe some kind of like bi-directional mic to get that effect?
With Audible Reality, no, you don't need anything special. You could do it with your phone and or your mic and your phone. So we set out to, when we started Audible Reality, it was a conjunction of like all these different things. I was working at a VR company who had just started working with Oculus. I ended up getting like a kind of a pseudo researching gig with Oculus, where they sent me the DK1, the first like head mounted display thing. And early on, that was awesome. It wasn't like, never had real VR with that kind of resolution, but the audio was still in stereo, and people were still just like panning things left and right to give you the 3D effect. So
I gotta say, to interrupt you for 1 second, because I had a powerful virtual reality experience probably like 2 years ago now. So I'm sure things have come along. It was on the PlayStation virtual reality. A friend of mine has it, and I was put it on in his bedroom, little room, and all of a sudden, boom! I'm in this like giant universe. And one of the things that struck me is I turned my head left and right, like the sound like stayed in the same physical position in relation to me, just as if I turned my head in the real world. And I was really amazed at how immersive it was, to the point when I think the most surprising part of the whole thing is when I took the headset off and I was still in that little room, and I was like, whoa, But I don't know if that was like 3D audio or just the panning that was happening inside.
It certainly is 3D audio. But yeah, so back to your question about whether you have to record or not. So yeah, we knew about things like that, and there were a lot of different industry players that come to McGill and want to test their stuff. Oculus being one of those, So, but we were working also with all the audio companies, and so I just thought, okay, if this VR company has no clue what 3D audio is, and they're using applications that also don't know what 3D audio is. And then I'm living in this world that's full on 3D audio, but you've got to record it. You got to have tons of mics up in a room, and then you got to have this big studio to play it back over 30 speakers. I personally was like, this is never going to work. It's a great concept. It's awesome for people like me who get to do that, but not everybody in the world has the money to do that, nor the space to put that kind of thing up. So my goal from the start was, let's make this thing as easy as possible. I want to take a SM57 and turn it into a 3D array of 60 microphones in a room if I want to. So what we did is kind of reverse engineer the problem. We listened to a lot of 3D audio in the lab and try to figure out how do you actually build 3D images of sound, not just a point source at a speaker. And so once we had figured out a method for doing that, that really made things a lot easier. Then it was just a matter of, well, how do you control that? And that's how I was able to really, take what I'd learned at Lander of this like automated solution, trying to not necessarily dumb down what audio engineers like us do, but simplify it, right? Like if I want to EQ something to be better, I could probably do that in like, 20 seconds or less, but if somebody doesn't know how to use the tool, it could be very, very difficult. So could you do the same thing in 3D? Could you make an image and could you just make that happen as a preset, or just like a one button control, and get someone to experience that and then let them decide is that good or not? And do I want to tweak it further? And so really in that process, that's how Audible Reality became a product. We were doing this with a lot of different OEMs or manufacturers of equipment, and mobile phones was one of the biggest interests. And we were trying to think, okay, well, you've got a terrible microphone on your mobile phone, you got terrible speakers, but people plug in all the time. That's the main point of consumption for audio. So could we deliver some kind of expansion effect for that phone to where it imaged in 3D whatever came in or whatever played out? And so that's how Audible Reality Player as an app was born. It was really just that idea of let's make a really quick way to thumb through a lot of different presets of expansion images and let the user decide whether they like it or not, and let them eventually control that to some extent and build their own.
So the app, the Audible Reality app, is something that you will listen to music through, and you will choose like kind of like where you are. Is that the idea? Like in relation to the music, or like what kind of space you're in?
Yeah. So the easiest way to describe it is, as an audio engineer and just a musician, that you'll grab 30 different guitars until you're happy with the right one for recording. And if you're a listener, you'll grab a pair of headphones, or you'll go to a special room where you'll have certain speakers that you like to listen to. We're essentially giving you that at a push of a button. We're giving you the choice to finally control the way you listen back to audio. Mm-hmm. Now, the job of a mastering engineer historically has been to be able to say, you've done your job as a producer, you've made the mix, everything's great. Now we're going to help you make sure that this translates to everywhere. Right. And as hopeful as that sounds, and as good as it can be, we all know that's as audio engineers, there's nothing we can do really to control that.
Sounds so great in your studio, then in the car.
Yeah. I mean, like, great example. How many times you mix a record and you're like, maybe it's a late night, and then you go in the car and you're like, damn, that sounds awesome. And then you wake up the next morning and hear it again. You're like, that tom. Right. What did I do? So, we're not creating anything to replace any other technology or anything like that. This is an additive. If you want to be able to take a great master, but then listen to somewhere where maybe that master doesn't really shine because of the DAC, or just the hardware itself isn't capable of really making it shine. We want to give you an option to kind of enhance that, and to do it quickly, and to not to have any professional background at all, just to flip through filters, which we call vibes. So set the vibe, and it creates a 3D, enhancement image for you to listen to that track. And in most cases, as you flip through, you're pleasantly surprised at what it can do. Like it's like sitting in front of a pair of speakers in a studio. If you've never done that before, you're just hitting that button, like, damn. So we want to give the user that ability, and then we want to be hands off at that point. We want it to be created by artists. We want to give it as a tool to mastering engineers, to artists, to music fans in general. Anybody who just wants to dive into music, let them play with it. And, if they find a vibe that fits their mood or their device or the song they're listening to in a way that's personal to them, awesome. That's what we want. Like the discovery of new sounds and new music experiences is a lot of fun. And it's also a great way, we can talk about business here in a sec, but it's a great way to get discovery of new songs or old songs in that matter. So it's driving more streams and more engagement for artists. And
Okay, so yeah, I mean, we've all probably had that problem, right? Like we said, like, you're listening to it, and like you said, that tom sticks out, or so many people will listen to songs just coming out of their phone speakers, which if you've worked on a mix, you're like, oh no, like, can you please put it on like a decent system? But this will help, I guess, correct the system a little bit to is
Yeah,
that, would that be a way to
I
say
wouldn't
it?
necessarily say that we're correcting anything that's wrong. It's
Uh-huh.
more or less that we're giving you a very simple way to control the sound experience. And you know, there are several times when you will listen to a song and you go into a new place, whether that's your car or you put on new headphones for the first time or something, and something doesn't feel the same.
Hmm.
Then you'll start to figure out ways to tweak it. It's kind of akin to what we're doing, but we're taking a step above that. These are really interactive masters. So it's the first chance that you actually have to say, I'm listening to this track, but I want to go back into that track and make it feel different. I want to hear this differently. And in fact, that's our tagline, hear music differently.
Hmm.
Um, and we found, I set out, I was honestly nervous to show this. I come from the audio engineering world. I know how picky we can be about our mixes, but the response has been incredible because people get it. They're like, oh, it's like throwing on a new plugin, or it's like throwing on a new effect. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a discovery of something new. So for us, that's what it's all about, is having a platform to say, I just released this track. I mastered it this way. This is how I felt in the studio. But then to immediately be able to go back and say, I just put 3 new vibes on that same track. It's still on Spotify. You don't have to download anything else. You don't have to stream anything else. But if you just apply the vibe on there, you're going to get a completely different mix or feel or experience with my track. So that's the part that I feel like it's new. It's something we've never had as listeners, to be able to decide how we want to hear a track that we have.
And you're also saying that engineers can create vibes for you, like suggest vibes for their track.
Yeah, so that's
Is that
the
maybe
whole
that's the
point
down the
here. Is
road
like
thing?
we're not trying to keep any creatives out of this process.
Yeah.
We built this so that artists and producers and engineers can all use it as another tool in their toolbox to get better engagement, to get new discovery of tracks, and just have more fun and understanding of what they're doing in terms of producing. So we just released this app. It's on iOS and Android. It's called the Audible Reality Player. Audible Reality Player supports Spotify playback. So you have to have a premium account to use it in our app. But as long as you're a Spotify premium, you can play from Spotify. You can also play from your local music as well on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Any of that music, no matter how it was mastered or published previously, it plays through Audible Reality, and then we apply the 3D vibes on top of that. So you can listen to any track with a vibe, and you can change it up on the fly. Essentially, what you have in the phone is a real-time plugin. You've got your studio plugin live in the phone and able to call presets and tweak it, on the fly. After our plugin, we are announcing that any artist can now, as a service, download our plugin, use that during the mastering process, or go back and go to older songs, or just create a vibe in general. But you'll be able to use the Audible Reality Pro as a DAW plugin to create, distribute, and actually sell vibes if you'd like to as well.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, as a listener, what are some of the vibes like? What would they be called, or what would they be like emulating? I guess like if I'm
So
selecting through the presets, like is it like giant hall, or like
yeah, so we have about, I think there's more than 10, maybe less than 15 stock vibes that come with the app. And then there's a smart vibe. So I'll talk about that smart vibe in a second. But the stock vibes that we've chosen all sound specifically different. One of the first vibes that I made, and what was the trigger for creating this app, is called Sparkle. And to me, I was listening to an Adele track. I had my computer open with the prototype idea up. I hit play, and then I applied the 3D process, and it immediately felt like I had loudspeakers in the room, or I was like on stage with Adele. It was just like a transportive kind of experience. So that's Sparkle. That's where it all started. And then we have stuff like Bomb, which Bomb just makes everything bigger and bolder and louder, so you got bigger bass, but it's not just deeper and more compressed bass. It's actually in spatial audio, you're decompressing, you're creating higher dynamic range. So you have expanded that bass. You've actually created 3D imaging of that bass around you. So you feel as if you're like near a subwoofer or something like that. And then we have stuff like Wide, which does what you think it would do. It just kind of expands everything really wide, and you get externalized sounds coming from the left and right. We have one called Elevate, and I'm very proud to say this. I think I've tested a lot of different 3D audio. I will still think that our 3D height is one of the most superb height algorithms out there. So definitely try Elevate, because it lifts everything above your head and you feel the image go up, which is a really cool experience if you've never had that before. So anyway, we try to name them appropriately to their like emotive effect or their sonic effect. And then we have the Smart Vibe. And so our business is really about making tools for artists, getting those into the hands of the artist to create more engagement on their music and drive another source of revenue. But in parallel to that, we're also licensing the APIs, the actual software that creates this, to other companies. And the Smart Vibe is there to actually learn how you listen and enhance your music. So if you're using the Bomb Vibe on a lot of hip hop, and that hip hop has audio features that are similar, it will start to learn your preferences of what you actually like in terms of enhancement. And what it's actually trying to figure out is, who are you as a person? How do you hear? And what special 3D audio cues are specific to you? Or which ones do you respond to best? And so as we learn that over time, we're also taking that information in from the cloud and learning how the whole population of Audible Reality users are listening, to make sure that we can also license a smart auto enhancement vibe. And so there's a lot of interest in that, especially on mobile, where, again, you don't have the best audio output all the time. Also in cars, and car audio is pretty good, but if you want to just set up a place where you can hit one button and just make sure it's always going to be enhanced to the best audio experience, that's what our Smart Vibe is doing.
Right. So if you're, say, in your car and you're always kind of correcting for whatever acoustic issue there might be.
Yeah. We do a lot of like retroactive work, where you have a basic model of a car or a basic model of a device, a headphone, whatever it might be, and you want it to feel premium, instead of actually paying for the hardware itself to get it to premium level. You can put a vibe on that and feel as if it's premium.
And you're getting this like kind of like changing where when we listen to music, especially in headphones, you get this sort of feeling that you're somewhere in the music. Certain things are surrounding you, and this is like a big part of mixing. You have things you put on the left, the right, the center, and also things that are foreground and background, and maybe something with a reverb that makes it distant. So are you like changing a little bit of like where you are in that world? Is this, or is it like enhancing the intention a little bit?
Absolutely. One of my engineers sent me a vibe last night called Dreamscape. It's a brand new one we're going to add into the app probably this week. And he put it on a Billie Eilish track, and it was just mind-blowingly different, but awesome. It's kind of like when you're testing out drum halls, your drum rooms. You're like, which one do I want? It was kind of that effect, and then one just sat. It was just so open and airy, and the track was just like a kind of like an acoustic, just Billy singing and some drums in the back. And it just opened everything up into like a new environment, and you felt totally immersed in it. And so I think, it does that 100%. But we can also do some really cool stuff. So we've already signed a lot of artists, and in our release this week, what we're premiering is the artists who've already made vibes with our tools. So you'll be able to actually download vibes from different artists that we've signed. To date, we've been working with Teddy Riley, Dan Wilson, and Semisonic, Bones UK, Ryan Cabrera, the Stone Foxes, whole bunch of Lauren Jenkins out of Nashville, a whole bunch of artists that are just jumping on board because they want to have more control over how their mix is heard. And so that's what Audible Reality Pro is going to give you. You actually put the plugin on your master chain, and no matter what you do during that mix, it all gets recorded through a vibe, which is essentially a preset. So as I mix my record, I might think about the vocal up version, the vocal down version, or the instrumental version. So now you can actually just capture that as a preset. You can just say, I want to spatialize the vocal up, then I want to make the drums big. Boom, got another preset vibe. So what we're working on now is a very, very simple way for any artist to do that. To date, we've been working exclusively hand in hand with these artists to help them make that and help distribute it. But eventually, it's going to be open to the public. You'll be able to pay a monthly subscription, very, very cheap, and get in and actually make your music like you always do, but save those vibes, go into a dashboard, launch them into the app, monetize them, get all the engagements about how people are listening to your tracks and which vibes they're using it on. And it's just going to be an incredible tool.
I could see how that would be an interesting way to get like replay value on your tracks too. Like you said, like you got the Dreamscape version, you got the I'm next to the subwoofer edition, and
Yeah. So to talk about business, the thing that's driving this is you think about something like Spotify. Spotify has, there's been reports that say that Spotify has 97% of all the streams that they have are not part of the hit makers, right? They're not part of that top 3% that gets streamed. So there's very small little bit of the total amount of streams available that are actually getting streamed by people. So can we help make that up? And absolutely we can. We can drive discovery on the same old tracks or new tracks or old tracks, whatever it is, and say, you got to hear this vibe on this. So we've also created a really cool interactive social feature in the app, and we're going to continue to grow that. So I can go into the app right now. I can pick a track and I can put a vibe on it and share it with you. And so just like you share an Instagram post, you're going to receive a vibe from me. So you'll see Matt just shared a vibe with you. It'll show you the song and the vibe that I paired with it. And you'll click on, I want to hear it. So when you do that, you click the link, it brings you back into the app exactly on that song and on that vibe. And you'll be able to see how many times it's been shared and how many times that vibe's been played. We're working on a search feature where you'll be able to search for your favorite artist and the top trending vibes. So we're really, at the very beginning of all this. What we want to do is blow it open into a new social, interactive platform for listening to music and have the tools to create that type of environment for your fans.
Yeah, that's cool. And that's like something I've always kind of thought would be nice to have in music listening. Like Instagram is like visual, and it's got the whole social thing, but like I don't know, maybe like SoundCloud is that on some level, but I don't know, most of the interaction I get is spam on there. But having something like that could be kind of cool. And then, hey man, that vibe you sent me sounds really good on this track. Listen to it over here.
Yeah, and we've got a whole bunch of stuff in the can that we've been waiting to release, and so this next year is really about that. Is if you can think of where we're at now, and the Audible Reality Pro plugin coming out in the fall, you could probably think ahead of where we're going. So we want to be like a TikTok for audio, and in that way, we want to let the fans have just an easy way to share their music experience, and we want the artist to have an easy way to create that. Where it goes from there, we really want to license this out. We want to get other companies thinking creatively and using Audible Reality as a platform to create new products. And so we've just started partnering with some different app companies. We've got a new partner who makes headphones. So that'll all be released here in the coming weeks. We'll be talking about all those partnerships. And yeah, just keep this thing growing.
When you have the plugin version, is this something, one of my favorite things to do with plugins and, audio technology is what you're not supposed to do with it, like misuse it. Are there any potentials for like just weird creative uses, maybe not even on the master channel, like on certain aspects of the audio, maybe your drums or vocal, I don't know.
We are really interested in having people like you figure out new ways to use it and actually create new ways to use it. And when we release the plugin, there'll be a feature where you're actually going to be able to create your own sound, your own experience, and then create a pack out of that so that other people can use that and other people can add it into their stack. So yeah, we want this to be not only a new way to listen to music and create these preset vibes, but how you get there. We want to do more than just mastering a track. We want to look at multi-track down the road and all that.
Yeah, because I could see that being a fun thing to play with, within a track, like have maybe like the 3D world changing even, or like, maybe they're in like a lot of times like a song breaks down and it gets kind of dreamy. Well, what if you threw this thing on there at that point? Yeah. And now you're like swirling in this world or something.
Yeah, for sure. So we're looking for early beta users. Any of the listeners who are interested in trying out the plugin, please feel free to reach out to us at audiblereality.com. Same thing with the app. We just released it, so we're in early stages, but we've got a bunch of great releases coming up this fall. So we're looking for those super users right now. We really appreciate the feedback, and we need it, to grow.
Now, let me ask you a question. I think this is cool, and I'm like always all for fun toys like this and things that'll change the experience. But have you experienced, or do you foresee maybe any sort of resistance from people that say, no, damn it, I mixed this track this way and we had it mastered and I went back over it 18,000 times and this is how you're supposed to hear my song? Is there any of that going on, or like I mean, because I guess
really.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so that was my concern when I made it. I don't think that we're getting any negative attention from engineers in the way that they're like, this is a tool that is undermining my work. And the reason that isn't happening is because we have the option of turning on a vibe or not. Right? This is just an app to listen to music in a new way. There's a power button where you can turn the vibe off and you just listen to it. And we want you to do that because much of 3D audio is the perception of contrast, right? Back to the whole way that we listen. We hear differences in cues. Without a difference, we have no contrast. And so without listening to something and then changing into something else and changing, we don't really pick up on all the cues that are there. And so we deliberately built a power button in there so you could hear the stereo and then hear the 3D version and then flip to another vibe and hear that version. And so, it's 3D audio on steroids. We want you to just play around, get that effect. And if you don't like it, you can always turn it off. But if you love it, you can put it on. And so for that reason, I don't think we're offending anybody in what we're doing.
Right. Okay.
I hope not, at least.
Yeah. Well, maybe I understand that feeling too of like crafting something. So that's why it's so frustrating when you listen to it in the other room and it doesn't sound exactly how you heard it.
Yeah.
But I think in a way, and it kind of makes me think a little bit of like filters on a camera. That's just like another. A lot of that is vibe, right? And like Instagram was cool because it was like this vintage photo you had now all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But people I think would have fun with that anyway. Just to like experiment a little, especially people like us, that are into experimenting with sound anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really our target demographic to start is more the technical minded music fans, but we actually have been really pleasantly surprised that anybody who loves music, anybody who just wants to feel something different, they're falling in love with this thing. They're really listening to different vibes and experimenting and sharing with their friends, and that's something that I just was kind of blown away with.
Yeah, like music is about that immersion, it's especially when you like put on a set of headphones or something, like you're going in, and it's
Yeah,
pretty cool that
yeah,
you can like play around with like where you're going in exactly, where you're
yeah,
going to be in that world. I'm
yeah,
excited to hear it. I think it's a really interesting idea, and I wasn't sure if at first you were talking with 3D audio if it was going to be like I need speakers everywhere, and because
yeah,
I mean that's cool too, but the thing is we have two ears, so it does
yeah,
seem like we should be able to figure out a way to get this with two inputs. But our physical world is so insanely complicated, and even when you listen to a piece of music on any system, it's getting colored
yeah,
always. It's always getting
yeah.
colored by what the speakers in the room, and whether you have a couch 3 feet or 10 feet away from the speakers, it all adds up.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But it's I think part of the vibe experience that I personally like is there are times when I'm in a less than ideal spot, and it's just a quick fix to make it feel better,
Right.
or in many cases, just if you need a volume boost. It's amazing how this thing will take something that's just not really alive and make it alive. And it's less of a like actual level boost and more of a perceptual boost. You get more enveloped in that, and so you
Hmm.
start to hear more things, and that can be really cool too, just to kind of lose yourself in another version.
Oh yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I mean, um, just the last few years they've been coming out with remixed and remastered Beatles records, and it's
Oh
just been
yeah.
so fun to listen to those and like hear things, and but you
Yeah.
still have the original. So like I've kind of like seen people like reacting to it, commenting on it, like, "Well, you can't touch the Beatles," but like it's not like you erased it. I mean, they didn't tape over it, so yeah. But to like re-experience music like that is cool. So I think this would be a lot of fun to just, like you said, you feel like you're on stage with Adele. Like that's awesome. That's
Really what we're doing is like we're just trying to take the benefit of 3D audio and what that gives you to make the audio feel different and bigger and wider and taller, and let you have that choice of how you like to hear it. And so I think in many ways, audible reality to me is a better term for what we do than 3D audio, because we use 3D audio as a method to get there, but what you're getting is this new reality of audio experience.
nice. Now, do you notice any sort of difference when you listen to different quality audio files? Like the strange things happen, say with like lo-fi, like MP3s, or
And that's an awesome question. And by accident, I discovered this. We were doing digital ads as one of the first like go to market strategies for the company. We're trying to figure out how we're going to make a business out of this. Um, and so they were like, the people we were working with were like, look, we serve ads to all the streaming services of like 64 kilobits per second MP3. We're like, oh my God, really? You know, they're like, can you make that sound great with Audible Reality? And so I'm not going to say we make 64-bit MP3 sound great, because
yeah,
nothing will make it sound great until it gets higher res. But we certainly make it sound better and sound more immersive, and the experience, I would say, is better. Um, so I think, as you get higher in resolution, of course, you're going to get more detail in 3D audio. We're only just taking the signal and playing with what's available to
yeah,
make it better, right? Or to make it enhanced. So sure, if you play me a 64 kilobit MP3 file, it's going to sound different, and hopefully it sounds different in a way that makes you feel better. Um, but generally speaking, no, we don't have any restrictions on sound quality, and the app that we have uses the auto setting in Spotify We also have the ability to actually go in and change the audio playback quality as well. So it's really up to the listener what they want.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking in my like creative, I want to abuse this plugin when it comes out. I want to see what happens when I put like something really low bit rate and everything in there,
Yeah.
just to see. That's cool. Yeah, I'm excited to hear it and check it out and experiment with it. And I think
Thanks.
it's a cool way to have a more, I guess, like active listening experience. You're kind of participating in the sound a little more
Yeah.
as a
Yeah, for
listener, and
sure.
then as the plugin, the pro plugin comes out to see what you can do to your own mixes. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
So audiblereality.com is the site if people want to check it out, right?
Yep. audiblereality.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that jazz. We're up there. The app Audible Reality Player is on iOS and Android. And the plugin that comes out this fall, it already works for Mac OS. We have a Pro Tools AAX plugin, AU, and VST. So if there's anybody who wants to get ahead of that and wants to be like our VIP user and try it out, experiment with making vibes, you can just shoot me a message on audiblereality.com. We've got a contact form or like a newsletter form. So just either go there and send us a message or hit us up on Instagram or something like that. And then the exciting part of all this is that the artist vibes are out. So we'll be launching more and more artist vibes. I think that's the most fun of this whole thing, is that we started making our own vibes, and then we started getting artists sending us vibes after they had signed the contracts with us, and that's a whole nother hurdle to go through. But it's amazing that all that stuff actually worked, and here we are today with artists making vibes and they're partners with Audible Reality, and like that's the dream has come true. We're moving towards a future of hearing music differently, and we're excited to see new partnerships and get more artists involved. So for the artists out there too, hit us up. We're still signing more and more artists to make vibes, and it's an exclusive deal right now. So we're working with artists that we have to highlight them and promote them until we do our public release of the plugin. Then for anyone who just wants to learn more about Audible Reality in general, there's a video on YouTube right now. It does a great job of just running you through that. So just search Audible Reality on YouTube and you'll find that.
Oh, well, I think that's really cool that you're able to put this really complicated technology in the hands of artists, give them some sort of interface to play around with sound and just where it is in your head. And I like your explanation of the microphone being like the ear without the brain, because so much about what you're doing as a mixing engineer is sort of like recreating these effects in the real world, that the way your brain perceives something. So
absolutely.
I'm excited about it. It's really cool. Thanks for all your hard work.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Great to talk to you. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, audiblereality.com. Go check it out. Go on the app stores. Go on Instagram. Give it a shot. See what you think. Have some fun and make some vibes in the future and share them. And we'll listen to music differently.